Hello and welcome to the Friday WrestleTalk Podcast with myself, Andy Datson, and my wonderful co-host, Denise Salcedo. I think we were just discussing before the show, Denise, you may now have completed WrestleTalk in terms of co-hosts because you've now had me. Have you done with Tempest?
I have done one with Tempest. No, wait, not on this podcast though.
Oh, okay. Well, you've presented with Tempest.
But on other shows, yeah.
Pete?
Yes, Pete too.
Ollie, you definitely Luke. Adam, definitely Adam. So yes. I think there is pretty much no one else to present with. So congratulations on that, first of all.
Collected all the Easter eggs. I completed the scavenger hunt, got all the rings. I'm good.
Exactly. It is something probably no one else in the world has done. So you should feel very proud of yourself.
I'm going to put it on my Wikipedia page. Denise Salcedo has hosted with every member of WrestleTalk. And I have our team name too, by the way, because I have a team name with everybody.
See, I have come up with a team name as well. So what did you come up with?
Team Dandy.
See, that is what Pete said.
Oh, is that what he said?
That feels a bit easy.
Okay, what do you got?
Team Star Anise.
What?
So it is obviously one of everyone's favorite spices. And obviously you're a star. My name's Andy. Your name's Denise. So frankly, it's the only thing that makes sense.
I love it. I mean, you made the graphics, so we're gonna roll with it.
Yeah. I mean, just look at it. That took a lot of work. That was
brilliant stuff.
Several seconds of Photoshop.
A whole seconds of your life you're never gonna get back. So yeah, thumbs up.
Exactly. Well, today we are going to be talking about the state of WWE's women's division, and this comes back off the back of an interview that Ember Moon did. With Chris Van Vliet. Ember Moon, of course, was with WWE some time in NXT, then on the main roster, then back on NXT, and then she was released. She is now wrestling as Athena, but she has had an interview with Chris Van Vliet. What she basically said in it is that during her time, during the kind of last few months of her WWE spell, she was told, and a lot of other wrestlers were told, female wrestlers specifically, to dress sexier. Because that is, I think it was John Laurinaitis who allegedly told them this. What are your immediate thoughts, Denise, on this?
So there's a lot to really break down in regards to what Ember Moon said, especially because like when I was reading the transcript of what she said, it was one of those things where I was like, damn, I think for me, when she talked about them saying that they brought in, I think it was like a stylist or something and told them that they didn't really say like, oh, you have to dress sexier, but it was alluded to apparently. Yeah. And that was later explained in a Fightful Select report from Sean. And so there was this whole thing about, bringing in a stylist. And then on top of this, basically saying like, oh, you need to look more like Mandy Rose, right? And let's be real, like a lot of us would love to look like Mandy Rose, but it's just not possible for some of us, it ain't possible for a few of us, okay? But, obviously they alluded, hey, we want you guys to, dress sexier, but I'm not surprised by this whatsoever, to be honest. I'm not surprised by it mainly because that is the clear direction that NXT 2.0 is headed in. It's the clear direction in which we have been seen. For example, take a look at Faith Lyons, who, just came in and, she's doing her thing on NXT 2.0. Her whole thing is like she comes in, they make sure that she's got the cutouts and the look, she's got the very seductive finish and all of that, and constantly the way they talk about her on commentary, where it's like, oh, Twitter is foaming at the mouth and this and that, and you get me. And so like we've seen the way that she's presented, we've seen the way Toxic Attraction is presented, and also just like the promos for NXT 2.0. So it's very, very obvious that that's the direction they're headed in. Now, I won't be surprised in like, here's the thing too, like there's a lot of times like I feel like, them telling the women to dress sexier, I wouldn't be surprised if that's not the first time that it was said. You never know. It may have been said, directly or indirectly to people. And I just don't think that these meetings were like the first time where, the female talent was told to, dress sexier and that sort of thing. I would be surprised if it was.
Yeah, I would be surprised as well. I mean, like, Mandy Rose is obviously a good wrestler, but I think a lot of people can sort of see the direction they're going with her and with Toxic Attraction especially. Are you in any way worried that WWE would be returning to a sort of time period where looks are more important than a kind of in-ring ability? I mean, with Ember Moon, she was always portrayed as a wrestler first. So would you be worried that because of the sort of meetings that are happening, that we could be kind of returning to that era where looks was so much more important?
Well, here's the thing too. At the end of the day, like WWE and sports entertainment and entertainment in general is a cosmetic business. Like regardless, like let's be real. If you're on a reality show, if you're on a talk show, if you're a TikTok star, if you're a YouTuber, whatever it is that you're doing in entertainment, you at least have to be like, pretty eye-pleasing, I think. So I think at the end of the day, it's going to be a cosmetic business, right? Now, in terms of, obviously we weren't in those meetings. We don't know exactly, what line of verbiage was used and all of that. But here's the thing, like, I don't have an issue with them saying like, hey, you should be more stylish. You should, really think about your presentation. Like, that's cool and all. Like, that's something that, people should definitely think about. But I think there's another whole other thing where it's like, if you have to go out there and sell your sex appeal, that's another thing, because not every single woman is comfortable doing that. There's a lot of women, myself included, who are not comfortable sharing like, oh, this like sex appeal side of you. So like, if let's say that I was in that situation where they were like, Denise, you got to be more like Mandy Rose, you got to be sexier, you got to start flaunting stuff, etc. It would probably be one of those situations where I'd be like, oh my God, I am totally screwed. Like, this is not something that's in my comfort zone. And I'm pretty sure there's other people like that. Now, there's other people that also so there's that one side of things. Then there's the other side of things where you're like, well, you know what? This is a job. I'm going to do what I got to do. So it's fine, whatever, right? It just depends on how you look at things. But I think to answer your question though, do I want to go back to a Divas era? No, we don't. And like, as much as, I have respect for all of those women and was a big fan of a lot of those women. And if I wasn't, I probably wouldn't be here right now. But the thing is, because we have worked so hard in terms of like, the women have worked so hard to basically elevate women's wrestling. It's like one of those things where you don't want people to say like, oh, this girl got hired because of the way she looks, not necessarily because of what she can do in the ring. At the end of the day, like, yeah, you got to be like decent looking and also, be able to go at it in the ring. But it's just one of those things where I hope they don't like choose just the looks over the skill. Like if somebody's going out there and they're gorgeous, but they just can't master in-ring wrestling, then, it ain't going to work out for you, So it is one of those things where I weekly watch NXT 2.0. That's my job. And, a lot of these matches that I've seen for some of the women and even some of the guys, but since we're talking about the women right now, they have not been that great, and there have been some really bad stuff on there.
Yeah, no, exactly. And I mean, you sort of see on Twitter as well that WWE is quite deliberately, like with Nikita Lyons, for example, with her pin, which is kind of sitting on her opponent's face. So they will tweet a very clearly a sort of a photo of that in an attempt to get as much kind of interaction as possible from its largely male audience. Now, I can see what they're doing, but do you feel like they are almost unnecessarily sexualizing their wrestlers? Or
Yes, completely and 100%. Yes. And that was one of the things that instantly, like, again, we've already been seeing this in the new direction of NXT 2.0, but it kind of hit me more so this past Tuesday. And it was during that match with Faith and Lash Legend when Faith came out and the way that commentary was talking about her, it was just so uncomfortable, like, I'm like, you guys, I said this on my podcast, but I'm like, they sound like those creepy uncles, those creepy uncles that are like, ooh, hey girl. And you're like, we're family, get away. that sort of thing. That's exactly what commentary sounded like. And I'm like, it's okay to like, have, this is not like an anti-sex appeal thing. Like, I don't want this to come across as like, oh, you're anti-sex appeal. No, but when that's like the sole focus on like the competitor, I feel like it takes away from the presentation of what you're supposed to be trying to do, like in ring wise. So I don't know if it's one of those things where it's like, okay, obviously these girls aren't wrestling like Sasha Banks, they're not at that level, right? But so then maybe they're like overcompensating and saying like, okay, well, they may not be out here having 5-star matches or anything like that, but hey, they're out here and they're looking gorgeous, etc. Because if you even remember too, God, what was that one girl's name? The one that the artist, and she came out to sing Ollie J. Yeah, when they had Ollie J on there, do you remember like what a big like hoorah they did about like everything? On social media, and I'm like, poor girl, like ain't nobody talking about like her music or anything like that. Everybody's talking about everything else. So it's just one of those things where it's like they're just focusing in so much on it.
Yeah, but do you feel like there's a pressure almost because of maybe they've been told, oh, we would like you to dress in this specific way, or we would like you to present yourself in a more sexually appealing way, that some of the women, while they might be uncomfortable doing so, almost feel like they have to do it, otherwise they're not going to be on TV.
Oh yeah, definitely. And again, you can't speak for every woman because everyone's going to think differently, but I'm pretty sure there are some obviously if Ember Moon wasn't one of them, she probably wouldn't have mentioned it in her interview. I think she mentioned somewhere, and I don't remember the exact line, but she mentioned something about, performing for kids and being told like, hey, dress sexier, that sort of thing. So I do think it depends on the person. I think that there are levels of comfort in terms of what woman is willing to show a little bit more than others. And I feel that sometimes people forget that because, I feel like we live in this like society where like you log on to Instagram and you're seeing like everybody like, woo, on the social media feeds and everything. So you think like, oh, because you see so many women that are comfortable, in their own skin and are able to be a little bit more sexier on Instagram and all those other apps. You think that every woman's like that, but that's not the case. Not every woman's like that because some of us just, feel awkward or maybe we're too shy or whatever the reason is. So I do think it depends on the person and how they might have taken that, like, hey, dress sexier.
Yeah, and it's sort of, I've seen a lot of people going, oh, well, this is wrestling. It is a business of sort of selling your look while also doing the wrestling. But can you imagine if they brought the entire men's roster into a room and went, oh, by the way, can you stop wearing like tights? Can you all wear really, really small trunks, please?
Yeah,
like, it just wouldn't happen. And also people making that argument. Imagine you are like an accountant, or you have a very normal office job, and your boss takes you into the office and goes, look, I'm really impressed with what you're doing, but would you mind just showing a bit more skin in the office? It would be a completely inappropriate thing to do. So while I understand that it is a business which thrives on kind of appearance and what you look like, any other business, it's a completely inappropriate thing to do.
Oh yeah, and like I'll just like speak like on experiences that I've even had. Back in the day I used to work on a podcast, and I remember being told like you shouldn't be wearing wrestling t-shirts, and I'm like, but it's a wrestling podcast. But they're like, no, you should wear dresses, this and that, that sort of thing. I've been a backstage interviewer in smaller promotions, and I remember one time this guy came up to me and was like, I was wearing like this red crop top and this black skirt, but the crop top was like long sleeve though, so you couldn't see anything. Like it looked like a dress with a long sleeve dress. And I remember this guy coming up to me and being like, "This is what you're gonna wear," and I was like, "Yeah." And he was like, like that sort of thing. And I'm like, okay, whatever. But it's like one of those things where, and then I'm not even going to say like this is just wrestling. It happens everywhere. I've had multiple jobs where people were like, hey, you got to make sure you wear this. You got to make sure you wear that sort of thing. And unfortunately, it just leads to, it doesn't always it doesn't always work well, especially in certain situations. And every situation is different. Not every situation is the same, but to pretend that it's not happening would be like super, super fake. It is happening, and it is happening in different places as well, not just like wrestling.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And so earlier we kind of discussed the move from the wrestler to the kind of the diva. And during the same interview, Ember spoke about how WWE actually wanted to take her off TV and to transition her into becoming more of a coach. And this was something that she simply didn't want to do. And I think the worry for me personally, when hearing that, is how can you have someone like Ember Moon on the roster, who is unquestionably one of the most gifted, not just women's, but wrestlers in the world. And you look at her and go, no, I don't want her in the ring. I want her training other women, which she can do both at the same time. She can be a wrestler and a coach. That is something that Daniel Bryan, for example, has been doing in AEW. So does it scare you as well that they are looking at Ember Moon and going, oh, no, not in the ring, I don't think. I think we should have... I mean, especially when... And no disrespect to Eva Marie at all, but you're bringing Eva Marie back into the company and you are putting her immediately onto the main roster. And while she may have improved a bit, for me personally, there was not a lot of improvement. And I think a lot of people were worried that she was simply brought back because of the way she looks. And I mean, that was her gimmick. She is a diva, basically. So bringing her in, obviously she's gone now, and then trying to demote someone like Ember Moon, who is a fantastic in-ring performer, to being a coach. Does that also worry you?
I would say yes to a certain extent, because it's like, you know that without having good women's wrestlers, the division is never going to, go beyond a certain point. You need to have great women's workers, to not only help maybe some of the ones that aren't at that level, but to also work with the ones that are at that level. And, without, for like, you think about like one of the best matches we've seen for the women recently in WWE at WrestleMania, you had Becky Lynch and Bianca Belair. Like the saying goes, it takes two to tango. Without one, the other one would not have been possible. Without each of them there, this match would not have literally stolen the show. And this includes both the men's and the women's matches. That was legitimately one of the best matches of both nights. And that's, there was some competition on that show for sure. You got Cody Rhodes, Seth Rollins, and Edge and AJ Styles. And at the end of the day, like, that was the match of the night. And so for a lot of people, right? So you got to think about it that way. Like, I feel like you can't, like, it's like, I feel like if they were going to bring in like one or two or like just a couple of like women that are not necessarily like super skilled, then it's like, okay, whatever, right? And I know that, but here's the thing too, like NXT 2.0 is taking like this different approach where they're bringing in athletes, and WWE is taking this approach where they're bringing in athletes versus your independent wrestlers. So they're not plucking these women out of your local indie wrestling. They're not doing that. They're bringing in these athletes. So it's like in hopes that these athletes could bring the superstardom, and that they can also become professional wrestlers in the way that you have your Sasha Bankses or your Charlotte Flairs, etc. So for me, it's like, if I don't hate that approach, like, I get it, but just because I don't hate the approach of bringing in athletes doesn't mean that they should just like completely disregard like those people that are on the independent wrestling scene, right? So I also get them bringing in women because it's like, oh, they're just like appealing looking. I get it to a certain extent, but I wouldn't fill my entire roster with competitors, men or women, that could not go in the ring. And there's also like, people already see like men's wrestling and women's wrestling at different levels. And like the last thing you want to do is basically make people see women's wrestling as less than, because you're not bringing in competitors that could meet that mark to keep the bar to, like, what's the point if you have people again like Becky Lynch and Bianca going out there and putting like this high caliber wrestling, and then you have like others who are like down here? It lowers women's wrestling So you got to keep bringing in people that are, going to keep the bar up, like keep holding up the bar like high. And even if they're not there yet, they're working towards it, working towards it. So I also want to take anything away from the girls, on NXT 2.0, because there has been a lot of improvement with a lot of the women that are down there. So I don't want to take anything away from that. I don't want people to be like, oh, just because you're sexy doesn't mean that you can't wrestle. That's not like a thing either. It's just more so like being able to like focus more on, hey, these girls can actually go and they can wrestle, versus, oh, we just care that you look sexy.
Yeah. And I mean, this week's episode of NXT 2.0 in particular was praised for its sort of depiction of its women's division, which I know is something that has been one of the main kind of talking points in terms of AEW. And it's obviously, it's the obvious comparison in this, isn't it? It's the portrayal of the WWE and, of course, the NXT women's division, and then the AEW women's division. Do you see any sort of major differences? Is there one that you prefer
between AEW and WWE?
Yeah, and just simply in their portrayal of their women's division. I know AEW has had their issues with. I know it's a kind of, well, we've booked our one women's match for the week. Let's move on. But I mean, you as a viewer, is there a presentation which you prefer?
So it's not about preferring one over the other. Like when Becky Lynch came out in that interview and she was saying, all of this and all of that, what she said about the WWE women's division in comparison to the AEW women's division, there were like her entire statement in general. I remember thinking like, okay, there's parts of this that I agree with, and then there's parts of this that I don't agree with, right? Mm-hmm. I feel like you can do that. Like you don't have to agree with somebody's entire statement. So my whole thing, like I want to start off talking about AEW, because AEW has gotten this massive criticism for their women's division for a long time now. Like this is not something that just started last month. Like this has been going on for a while. And I feel that all those criticisms towards the AEW women's division are 100% rightfully there. Like you should be like, talking about this, because it is true. Like you don't get to see as many women's matches. There is, you can talk about certain women's runs that weren't necessarily that great in terms of they didn't even, like, for example, the big one, Hikaru Shida. When she was champion, it was like nobody even knew, it was kind of upsetting for that. That was the big, like, damn, like do something with your champion, that sort of thing, right? And then, Britt Baker, she becomes champion, and, they do better with Britt Baker. They really do better. And the thing too that I want to start off by saying too is just because the AEW women's roster hasn't been necessarily perfect, I don't want to pretend that they haven't at least put some effort into that, because like I said, you saw changes with Britt Baker in terms of her presentation as champion. It could have still been stronger. Completely could have been stronger, but you did see some changes. You got the incorporation of the TBS title and, that entire tournament that they did. At Revolution, I believe they had 3 women's matches on there. So they were, at least trying to move forward, but I still don't think that but then recently, with Thunder Rosa, for example, as champion, it was like, oh my gosh, she's champion. This is great, blah, blah, blah. And we rarely get to see her on Dynamite and Rampage. Like they have her come out and do these little promos, but nothing has changed from Thunder Rosa before she was champion and Thunder Rosa after she's champion in terms of how AEW is presenting her. So that was my thing too, where I'm like, dude, she's your champion. Like put her out there, have her do something, go out there and talk, wrestle somebody. I don't know, anything except just these little background little promos that they're doing. Or for example, just this past week, she was just watching the match with Serena Deeb and Shida, and then on top of that, I'm trying to get this. There's so much to talk about here. Also, you can also criticize the fact that with Thunder Rosa, when she became champion, they immediately reverted back to, your first challenger, who's it going to be? It's going to be Nyla Rose, and a lot of people were like, this is, rinse and repeat. Like we've seen this, a bunch of times. So with that being said, they do need to have more women's matches. They need to give the women more time. That was one of my big criticisms for this week for Shida, for the Phillies, for Shida and Deeb's match. My big criticism for that one was I really do think that the lack of time kind of took away from that match and what it could have been. And so that's one thing there. So AEW definitely needs to still work on their women's division and not just like do 1 or 2 weeks of like great booking for the women and featuring the women. No, it's got to be like consistently, because right now they kind of have built this reputation that they're not building the women's division, you know, properly. So now in order to get that out of people's heads, you got to consistently, you know, keep building upon that, right? And they have a lot of women too. Like they don't have women that, you know, I get it. Like there are some women that are still not at that level yet. You know, not everybody's, you know, Thunder Rosa or Ruby Soho or Britt Baker on that roster. But regardless, they still have a lot of like young women on that roster that, you know, could grow and could get better. You know, a big example of that was Ty Conti. She absolutely like improved. And then you could do that with a lot of the other women. You know, we've been seeing like Robin and Charlotte, Sky Blue, you got Willow Nightingale, like you got so many other women there that are, you know, getting their, you know, reps in and whatnot. So then over on the WWE side, like you got they also have their criticisms too. Like they are doing, I think, a far better job in terms of giving more consistently seeing the women on their show. So on that end, they are, you know, we're seeing more of their women, right?
Yeah.
But I do think like when you think about a lot of the stuff that they're doing there too, it's like they really slimmed down their women's roster. That's something that we wish that, you know, didn't happen. There are also the big criticism that I have for WWE with Raw and SmackDown is that they bunch up their singles division and their tag team division, and they've kind of rendered the tag team titles to not really mean anything. So that's a whole other thing. And then not having challengers for your champions, that's another thing. So I do think that both sides have their fair amount of criticisms. I don't think that either side is necessarily perfect.
No, I mean we can go through the Serena Deeb match specifically, and also the state of the Raw Women's division a bit later on when we go through the week. But I will just mention. So you mentioned the Becky Lynch interview earlier. So it was with Drew Garabo on live feature. I'm just reading this, by the way. Featured cut of the day. She said in response to whether she thinks the AEW women's division is well presented, she said, I wish I could say yes, but unfortunately I don't think they are presented the way we are. They don't get as much time as we get, and frankly they're not as good as we are. We have, certainly on Raw, we have the best women's division in the world. I say that without any hesitation in my voice. We have the best women's division in the world. So, and you can absolutely see her why she would say all of this. I mean, she's a WWE star. I don't think anyone's kind of questioning like, oh man, why would she come out and say this?
She kind of has to, you know. She kind of has to on that end, yeah.
Exactly. And I don't see, I don't see why anyone would have an issue with that. And to be honest, some of her points are absolutely correct. So I think that in terms of pure star power, Raw has as obviously her Bianca Belair, Asuka. I guess with Sasha and Naomi being the tag champions, they've got them as well, and you can sort of completely understand that point of view. So I can't see anyone questioning that. But I think we should probably move on. Thank you for your insight. It was very, very interesting. I'm sure everyone in the comments and who's watching agreed. We will be moving on to our Ultrachats, but first, I have a question for you, Denise.
What is it?
Do you think that you know the most about Taylor Swift out of all your friends?
Yes.
And you think is that a good feeling?
Yes, it's a great feeling.
Of course it is. And so why wouldn't you want to know the most about wrestling? And you can do that by reading the wonderful WrestleTalk magazine. The link is in our description. Basically, it is the only magazine you need every month. We are doing a online version. We are doing an in-print version. But if you go online, if you head to the link in the description, you can get a whole year of the WrestleTalk magazine for just £10. That is a fantastic deal. It is truly a wonderful magazine. We all write in it. There is some wonderful insight from some really, really fantastic writers. So please do head on over there and pick that up. But we will move on to some Ultrachats, if I can just find the document. Well, here we go. Right. So this is specifically on the women's division. So Just Know Yes has donated $5 to say, when I got back into wrestling in 2016 because of Jamp Adam, I was surprised over how great the women's division was. I don't want the Divas back. I want great wrestling and women getting a chance to show us. Where is Luke, by the way? Did he break his ass too?
That's true. Where is Luke? He just told me he was taking a day off.
So Luke has been forced to take a day off because, as you know, as the hardest working person in all of sports what do they call you? What is the exact?
I don't know. It's Luke's thing. He's
the
like
hardest working person in the world. He basically never takes a day off, and he keeps working weekends and working extra. So Ollie has forced him to take a day off.
Ollie doesn't want to be sued.
Exactly. So he's just taking some well-deserved time off. But I think we all agree. We just want great women's wrestling and the best wrestlers to get a chance to show what they've got, basically.
Exactly.
Mayor of Painesville, Dan, says, hello, Andy. Hello, Denise. I hope you are doing well. And Andy, in case you're wondering, you're doing great. Thank you, Dan. I'm very proud of you. Always have been. You are a very, very great person. I promise this is what it says.
I was going to say, how do we know this is real?
I can show you.
It feels
I promise.
like Andy propaganda.
Also, you're really handsome. You're just the greatest person in the world. And I love you. On the topic, though, in WWE, sadly, it is all about looks. Now, I don't think it's all about looks, Dan. As much as I appreciate the rest of your message, I don't fully agree with that. Yes, in some aspects.
But you agreed with the parts about you being so great, so wonderful. I don't know how I feel about that. I'm just kidding.
It's fine. I think
I said some biasness going on.
I'm not sure. It's not because I let him stay at my flat once. The Jedi Muffin says, remember when AJ Lee and Paige made their main roster debut? We just don't have shock women's moments like that with younger talent. Becky took years to catch fire and has never been better than at Survivor Series All Bloodied. Bring back Paige.
See, obviously, Paige is dealing with her own stuff. It's not like you'd just be like, I mean, she could come back and do like a non-wrestling role, right?
She absolutely could. I mean, she did do that for a while. She was the SmackDown general manager. I mean, there have been lots of teases, haven't there? I mean, she keeps teasing it. I mean, she may just be doing it to troll fans, to make them get excited. But I mean, she said in the past that she would absolutely love to if she could get cleared. But
of course.
I mean, if she can't get cleared, then of course she can't come back. So while it'd be wonderful to see, of course, please only come back, Paige, if you can. Hammy Gas donated $10 to say, I'd love to see Forbidden Door matches between the number one contenders of each company, and if the AEW wrestler wins, they have a short run in New Japan, culminating in a title shot, and vice versa if the New Japan wrestler wins. It would give stakes to the matches. I
think that would be cool. I mean, I think it'd be a little bit harder to do, but I do think that would be a cool concept.
Yeah, no, I mean, have you got any specific dream matches that you would like? I know Luke and Tempest discussed it last week, but have you got like a top 3 matches you would love to see?
For me, it's definitely Bryan Danielson and Okada. I would really like to see that. I think that they could do something really cool. And I really, that's the one that I've been saying like on every podcast, just because I'm like, that's the one I really want. Everything else for me, like I'll be cool with anything, but that's the one I really want to see.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Me too. Legit Underboss says, Denise, what matches are you looking forward to at Triple Mania tomorrow? And will you be doing a review this year?
No, I'm not watching the show tomorrow. I feel bad, but I'm planning a wedding and I'm less than 90 something days of my wedding, like 90 days away. And I don't have very many weekends available where I can do, wedding stuff. So this weekend, that's what I'm going to be doing. So I'm like, I haven't even been like keeping up. I'm just like, oh man, I got it. Like it's very hard to do like doing a full-time career and also making sure to plan this wedding that I recently I put off hold planning stuff because of like COVID and everything. I had pushed back the wedding, and the next thing you know, I'm like, oh my God, I'm getting married, and I haven't done anything.
Have you planned any wrestling spots for the wedding? Are you gonna choke slam
There's going
your
to be
husband?
absolutely nothing wrestling related in my wedding. Nothing.
No, you're not gonna come out in wrestling gear and
one tiny thing. Nothing.
Probably for the best.
I was gonna say probably for the best. It's like everybody's asking me that. I'm like, why would you guys think that I'm gonna do like a wrestling themed wedding? Like, what is this? No, it's gonna be a very classy affair.
Walk down the aisle to, I don't know, Asuka's music.
I know. I mean, I'll just come out.
Wear a mask, take it off right at the end. Yeah. Right. Well, thank you for your Ultra Chats. Please do keep getting them in. WrestleTalk.com/support. We will read out all the rest at the end of the show. Now, we will be talking about, if I can again find the document, be gentle, it's my first time. There it is. So we talked about women's wrestling. We will keep talking about women's wrestling. This week's episode of Raw saw not only the return after a short period away of Becky Lynch, but also the return of Asuka. And not only that, but they're going to be feuding. Are you excited?
Yeah, I mean, obviously, I think that time away that Asuka had from WWE, and she was gone, and her injury and all of that, she was gone for like what 10 months, I believe. She was gone for a while, and so I really do think that has like kind of rebooted her in a way, because it's been such a long time since we've seen her, where I feel like excited to see Asuka again. And I have a feeling like, not much is going to change, but I am looking forward to this with like Becky Lynch, just because they do have that history. We all know, we all know that Becky Lynch gave her the title when she left to go be a mom. And, since then we've had the rise of Bianca Belair. Now Becky Lynch is back. Now she's a new Becky Lynch. And so there's so much to kind of catch up on. And given that we left things the way that we left things back in May of when God, what year was it? The year that she left? We're in 2022, so 2021, right? Yeah, so 2021 was when that whole thing went down. So it's like kind of going off of that, and that the fact that there's an actual story there, and that it looks like we're touching back on that, it makes me happy, because I'm like, it doesn't always happen that we pick up on things.
It was 2020, I think.
Was it 2020?
Last year's WrestleMania was Sasha versus Bianca. And
I was going to say, when did Becky get pregnant and have her baby? I feel
like
it was May of 2021.
How old is the baby? Because she returned at SummerSlam last year.
Oh, yeah, you're right. What year am I in?
It must be 2020.
It had to be 2020.
To be honest, Denise, the last 3 years is like a week for me.
It's an extended 2020.
Honestly, I have no idea when anything happened.
Okay, so then it was what? May 2020?
May 2020, because it was the night after Money in the Bank.
There you go. Okay.
Easy. Yeah, we know what we're talking about.
We know what we're talking about. I just can't put it in a time frame.
No, but one of the things I was going to say is that it is interesting to see, obviously, they are feuding not over the title. Now, while that's great in itself, you sort of have to wonder where that leaves Bianca Belair after beating Sonya this week. I mean, do you think that for Backlash it's just going to be Sonya again? Do you think they're going to start setting something else up?
I hope they start something. I hope they start something with Rhea Ripley.
Yeah, that is because they have been. I think the live shows has been Rhea Ripley and Becky Lynch. So hopefully that means they're testing out something with Rhea Ripley. But then you have to think, are they going to do Rhea Ripley against Liv Morgan for 14 weeks and then just kind of everyone gets bored of that? So where do you think this leaves Bianca? Do you think that there's the worry that they're going to put more focus on the Becky Lynch feud simply because it's Becky Lynch, and then the champion will become kind of the secondary component of the women's division.
I think so, because if you notice, like a lot of the times they really focus on one feud, one story, and then like everybody else is like kind of like they kind of get included in that picture, but they're still not really part of it. So I do have a feeling it's going to be like this focus on what they're doing with Becky and Asuka, and probably Bianca and Sonya for a little bit more, and then kind of move on from that. But I do agree with you. I do think there's going to be more of that focus on Becky and Asuka, which I don't have a problem with, but I also don't want to like disregard the champion.
Well, because you can look at the Raw Women's division, and I mean there are some names which I would say are obvious candidates, and one of those is Alexa Bliss.
And where is she? Like, she hasn't been back. Like, I mean, I know she just got married, but I don't know when she's coming back.
No, so I mean the reports are that she is very frustrated and that she is looking to come back. She's had like one-on-one chats with Vince McMahon about saying, I want to be back. And she says she's ready. Yes, of course, she did get married, but that doesn't stop her from being able to wrestle, of course.
Right.
So as far as I'm aware, she is ready and able to return. And of course, they had that moment in the Elimination Chamber where it was Bianca and Alexa, the final two. And you got to think, and I think it was strange for a lot of people at the time where they just sort of went, "Oh, Alexa was in the final two. Okay, moving on." So I wouldn't be surprised if they bring Alexa back just, I don't know, on Monday, and then just have a 1 week feud, 1 week build, a one show build for Backlash.
And also, like, remember when they were doing the whole like therapy thing? Like, they started that, and so you thought, okay, she's going to, come back like full time after those things are done. And then, like you said, we saw her like that Elimination Chamber, and then that was like literally it. It was like gone after that. So you have to wonder, like, are they not sure? I mean, I think it's more of like they're not really sure what to do with Alexa Bliss, especially considering that she has this like character. But from the looks of it in therapy, she's kind of like rid of that. So I don't know. It's really weird with Alexa. I'm not really sure what's going on with like her character, at least.
No, and to be honest, I think the best thing, and I don't know whether people agree with this, but I think the best thing they can really do is just bring her back as the goddess. Just give her a refresh or a similar character, because that is the Alexa Bliss that everyone loves. For whatever reason, that is the character that got over. Yeah. And I think is the best version of Alexa Bliss, the heel version specifically of the goddess character, because okay, great, she did some stuff with Bray Wyatt and the Fiend, but I don't think anyone really kind of was like, oh, this is the best Alexa Bliss we've ever had. I think it was very much okay, this is her for a bit, and then presumably she'll become Alexa Bliss again, which I think to pretty much everyone is the goddess character. And if you look at the rest of the Raw Women's division, you can't really think of anyone who you would look at and go, you are a legitimate competitor, or no, legitimate opponent for Bianca Belair at this time, other than Asuka and Becky Lynch, because you've got Carmella, who
is not really seen at that level.
Dana Brooke isn't. Doudrop, it would be great if she was, but I can't see her as a legitimate competitor against Bianca Belair. Of course, she's wonderful,
and they've already done it. Cena been there, done that.
Nikki ASH, Queen Zelina, Rhea Ripley would be great. Sonya Deville, she's just beaten. I can absolutely see them rerunning the match again, just because they can't think of anything else. And then and then the last one is Tamina. So, I mean, other than Alexa Bliss, and Rhea Ripley, I really can't see anyone who not only would be a good competitor, but would make me interested in the match itself. Because if, let's say, it's Queen Zelina, I'm not sitting there going, oh, wow, are they really going to put the belt on? Like, of course they're not.
Exactly. Like, no one's thinking it. I mean, they could surprise us, right? At the end of the day, it's WWE, and they've had surprised us, but no, like, logistically, like, speaking, like, I don't think so. So I just, it's slim pickings, honestly. And that's one of the issues that, I mentioned earlier with the WWE women's division, is that it's slim pickings in terms of like having challengers for your champions.
Yeah. And moving on to the men's side of Raw, we saw the return of...
We're going to talk about some men today.
I know.
We're ruining our theme, Andy. This was all like the chick stuff.
I'm sorry. I could talk about Roxanne Perez on NXT if you like. I could talk about
No, I'm
the
just
T.
kidding. Do what you already had planned.
So,
I don't want to switch up your pants and be like a diva here and be like, no, we're gonna discuss this.
Hey, it's my first time. I will do whatever you tell me to do.
All right, fine. Let's just start talking about cupcakes.
All right. I like
or desserts.
What's your favorite flavor cupcake?
So I really like red velvet, and I kind of like all flavors, to be honest.
Cream cheese frosting.
Cream cheese frosting, man. I'm so there for cream cheese frosting. I love it.
Do you like it? Do you like it when they kind of swirl on top?
Yeah, I like.
Have you ever taken out, cut it in half, and then flipped it so that it's like a cream cheese frosting sandwich?
No, I've never done that, but I should do that. I was gonna say I like when it has like a little like surprise filling inside.
Because otherwise, when you take the first bite, it's like all cream cheese frosting. But if you then cut it in half and then do that, then you've got like a kind of burger where it's sort of you get a bit of everything.
I need to do that because I've never done that. So I need to do that. But like yesterday, I went cake testing and I tried 6 different flavors of cake.
Did you pick one?
Yeah, I did. I went with the chocolate with the strawberry filling. So nice. Good. It was so good. At first I was like, oh, I don't think I'm gonna go for that one. But then once I tried all of them, I was like, that one was really good. Yeah.
Well, I await the invitation.
Yeah, I'll send it over.
we will talk about some men. Finally, we're talking about some men. They deserve their chance in the spotlight for once. Mustafa Ali returned. I think this was a shock to everyone who hadn't read Sean's report. But what were your sort of first impressions of him returning? Were you surprised to see him return? What do you think they're going to do with him? Is this just a way of kind of bringing someone back to be beaten? Are you worried that it's just going to be a case that he's just going to get squashed?
I have a lot more questions than I have theories. I think my whole thing was, what the hell happened? Like, what changed? That's my big thing. Like, what changed where it went from, see you guys, this is not working out. Obviously there was that report that he and Vince had this big argument, whatever, right? And so like, I was just wondering like what changed. And so now my whole thing is, I don't think they're going to give Mustafa Ali like a big push or anything like that. I think it's just going to be like a, maybe he'll be a big focus for the first couple of weeks, but it'll like probably fade in after that. He'll probably go back to exactly what he was doing before, which was not really that much. So I'm not really expecting anything out of this, but I still think it's a lot better than not seeing the guy on television and him essentially being away from TV for like, those X amount of years that he still had left on his WWE contract, all because of, some argument and some blowout and them not wanting to release him of his contract. Yeah,
because it, like you say, it went from the reported argument, the reported unhappiness, to then publicly requesting his release. And then it went to the Free Ali movement, where he was very clearly, he wasn't pulling any punches. He was, I want to leave this company, and they are basically keeping me in prison because they are not letting me leave. And there was a lot of backlash over this from fans saying, like, why are you keeping him if you're not going to use him? And then there's been a bit of silence. Like, he's been sort of tweeting kind of teases that he'd like to wrestle with specific people. I think there was a tease that he would like to work with Bryan Danielson and who wouldn't. And then it just suddenly, this report comes out. Oh, by the way, Mustafa Ali's back and he's on Raw tomorrow night from Sean. And there was no build up to this. It was very much by the way, he's coming back. And often with these things, you'll hear, oh, they are planning a Mustafa Ali return at some point in the coming weeks. And this is the reason, because this has happened backstage. But this was just such a shock, I think, to everyone.
Yeah, I agree. I think it was too. I like that Tommaso Ciampa, did the attack because at least
Ciampa.
Oh yeah, I forgot that it's just Ciampa now. Dang, it's gonna take me a while. Ciampa, I did like that he did the attack on Ali because I'm like, okay, then this means that we at least have a direction for him and a direction for where we're headed with this. So for me, I'm like, okay, we got something. We know what's next, right? So there's at least a bright side on that end of things.
Yeah, and I mean, if those two are feuding, one of them has to win. I think a lot of people were worried that if they just brought him back, he would immediately lose, and I think a lot of people were also worried that Ciampa would just get buried as well because he's a bit smaller than some of the other guys on the main roster. Obviously, he's ripped and jacked to shreds, but I think a lot of people were kind of worried that because he was originally a cruiserweight and he's a bit short, that he would be another guy who would just get lost in the main roster. But it's nice to see that at least one of them is going to win this feud.
Exactly.
So at least that's nice.
That's something new to look forward to. That's nice too.
Exactly.
Something we haven't seen before.
And speaking of things we had never seen before until this week, Dax Harwood, we're moving on to AW here if you hadn't noticed. Dax Harwood took on Cash Wheeler in a pretty wonderful match on AW Dynamite. Of course, Dax won the match to qualify for the Owen Hart tournament. But for me, that's not the most interesting part of the week. Obviously, that was great. But there were these reports from Sean a couple of weeks ago that WWE were interested in bringing them back at some point. And then it was again reported that they actually had quite a lot longer than we thought on their contracts with AEW. And then this report from Ringside News, who, well, not my favorite website in the world, they have been accurate with some of their reports recently. And the most recent one of those is that actually WWE really doesn't want to bring back FTR because a lot of people really don't like them. Would you like to see them back in WWE one day, or are you very happy with where they are right now?
I think that they are doing a good job with where they're at right now, and I feel like this is really where they have I feel like this is really where they're cementing their legacy as a tag team together. Obviously, things could change down the line, never say never, but I personally think that they're doing just fine right now. And on top of that, FTR did do an interview with Renee Paquette, and they basically told her that they pretty much know as much as we do in terms of the reports out there about WWE being interested in them. And they basically said that they already told Tony Khan that they're not going to be having any sort of contract negotiation conversations with anybody, out of respect for Tony Khan, that sort of thing. And they also basically said that, they don't know anything other than what has been, put out there and what has been reported. Yeah,
no, I think it's one of those things where I guess whenever a story like that comes out with WWE being interested in an AEW star, of course, it's a huge story because for so long we've had WWE stars leaving the company and joining AEW. So whenever one of these comes out, like with Cody Rhodes, it's going to get a lot of interest from people. And I mean, me personally, I think they're doing a great job in AEW. I wouldn't want to see them back in WWE. While there are tag teams in WWE's tag team division, which I really, really do like, I don't think having seen them as the revival on WWE's main roster, I don't think it's the right fit for them.
Exactly. I completely agree with you.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Thank you. It's a wonderful
Gold
opinion.
Star.
And do you also agree in that case that the TNT Championship, which is of course won again by Scorpio Sky this week, do you feel like it's being a bit hot potatoed?
Yes, and I do think it's devaluing the title, and I'm not a fan of hot potatoing bouts. I've always been anti short reigns. I'm not really big on that, and they've really been shrinking down those length of reigns to the point where I even forgot. I'm like, wait, who's champion again? By the end of the night, I was like, I forgot who's champion. Retain and new. Where are we at on this sort of thing? So, yeah, I do think that they're hot potatoing the TNT Championship. So I hope that they don't do it too much, in the next coming months.
Yeah, and
I feel one more is coming. I don't know when, but I feel it's coming.
Yeah, I mean, it feels like it's devaluing the title a bit, and it's not something that AEW does very often. I mean, generally, title changes are seen as a very, very big thing. I mean, there was a time when the tag titles kind of swapped sort of owners for a bit, but generally, it's kind of one of those. Really is built up to a pay-per-view, but the TNT title, I guess, because it is a secondary title, it feels more acceptable to be kind of swapped on diff.
I would say no. I would say no, not too acceptable. At least not to me, because it's like at the end of the day, it's still a title, and you don't want it to make it. You don't want to make it feel like the 24/7 championship. So no, I would say that just because it's the secondary title doesn't mean that they could have a little bit more leverage with it. I still think that they should protect their belts, protect all their belts. I don't care like if it's a title that no one cares about, like make people care about it.
And speaking of making people care about things, we'll finish, I think, on the final topic. And we're coming back to the women's division. Don't you worry. We discussed it briefly earlier. Serena Deeb versus Hikaru Shida. It is the 5th time these women have faced each other in the last 6 months. And as Luke pointed out in the office, they still haven't had a match on pay-per-view. And he is very, very frustrated about this. And I absolutely see where he's coming from. I mean, this is one of the biggest women's feuds that AEW has ever had, and they keep putting it on free TV. Do you think it's disrespectful to them? I mean, why? I mean, with Double or Nothing coming up, could they not have extended it a bit further, build up both women, have them just defeat other people, and then put it on Double or Nothing? Or do you think this was simply put so that the winner would then face the champion at Double or Nothing?
I think that they probably rushed because this could have easily been a match on Double or Nothing. They could have had this, the street fight at Double or Nothing, right? But I do think that it was done so that, hey, Thunder Rosa can have something. At the end of the day, she's your champion for Double or Nothing. Like, who else was she going to be feuding with? Like I said, there really isn't much going on with her as champion, which, is not. So this is something that they should do. They need to obviously do more with her as champion. But on top of that, it's like, I do think, though, like that match, like I mentioned earlier, I do think that it should have had more time, especially because to me, this should have been like the last and final match out of their like whole entire saga between them. This should have been it. The story that they were telling, the stipulation and everything. This should have been the last match for at least a good amount of time, because I'm at the point where I like love seeing them together and I love seeing them wrestle, but I don't want to see this match again. I've seen it, been there, done that multiple times. Like you said, 5 times now. This last match was the last one I wanted to see at least for like a year or something. Yeah. I don't want to see this match again because I've already seen it too much.
Yeah, and you don't want, sort of, with the criticism of AEW's women's division already there, you don't want kind of more things to criticize, because then it just becomes a kind of a heap of criticism, rather than like, yeah, you need to have more women on your shows. That's one thing, but if there keep being more things added, then there's going to be a lot of heat, kind of fan heat on the women's division. That's, I think, the last thing we really want to see.
Exactly. So I think had they just given this match more time and let them have like an actual blowout, I think it would have been a really good way to like just end this feud.
Exactly. Right. So before we head off today, we will read out some Ultrachats. But once again, please do check out the WrestleTalk Magazine. This stream is sponsored by the WrestleTalk Magazine. The link is in the description. It is a wonderful magazine. Look, I'll prove it. Look at that. Just look at that front page. What a wonderful magazine. It really is the only magazine you need to be the smartest wrestling fan in the world. So please do go and check that out. But we will finally read some Ultra Chats. Mr. Kajili says, hey, Andy and Denise, how are you both? Have you checked out her nose? Oh, Alexa's nose recovery pick. That was very extreme. But no matter how you slant it, the Raw division is very good right now. Alexa, Rhea, Sasha, Naomi, Bianca, Becky, Asuka, maybe Bailey, and Liv. Have you seen the photos?
No. Is it on her page?
It is on her TikTok. It got taken off Instagram.
Oh, it's on TikTok? Oh, I was going to say I haven't seen it on TikTok. I was hoping it'd be on Twitter.
Let me see if I'm going to see if I can find a way to show people. Alexa Bliss nose recovery, because it is.
Oh, I saw it. A little screenshot of it here. Oh, ew.
Yeah.
Okay, yeah, I'm seeing the screenshot here from her TikTok. Oh, yeah, it looks brutal.
Yeah, actually, I don't want to be demonetized, so I won't show it because it is brutal.
Okay. I just saw it on here.
Check it out. Just go on WrestleTalk.com and search Alexa Bliss. It'll be one of the first stories that comes up.
Put Alexa Bliss nose.
Exactly. Alexa Bliss nose. Alexa Bliss swollen nose. You get the idea. And Mr. Kajili again has said, on the Alexa situation, it's very odd and crazy that Ali, Veer, and Asuka have been on Raw Live more than Alexa. Perhaps she should pull an Ali or a Jeff or a Sasha and threaten to leave and shake the WWE and Vince out of his current mindset to a megastar.
I don't think that would happen.
No, I think Alexa is. I think while she's frustrated, and this is just my opinion, I'm not speaking for her at all, but I feel like she is still viewed as one of the biggest stars in the women's roster. The creative simply just hasn't thought of anything
Right.
for her. It's not a kind of dewdrop situation where I actually think, oh, they probably just don't really care that much.
Mm-hmm.
It feels more like they do care, they just don't have anything right now. I'm sure
I
she'll
think
be
so
back.
too.
And finally, for now, unless we get any last minute ones, Sheldon Jackson has said, what is Impact Wrestling doing right? Oh no, another one popped in. Sorry, on the previous topic. I'll read that one out first. Will Campbell says, the women's division in WWE has a special place in my heart because it was Becky who pulled me actively into watching wrestling in the first place back in 2019. Also, the NXT fashion stuff sounds a bit like Johnny Ace being Johnny Ace. Also, great job, Andy. And again, I didn't just add that for my own pleasure.
I was going to say, everybody's giving you the good job on here. I'm the one up at like 7 a.m. to do this show.
Well, I know,
had,
but
like all day's energy.
Yeah, well, I mean, so Ollie has banned me from. I did one episode of the news, and Ollie was, because the reaction was so positive. Ollie's now banned me from doing it again. Unfortunately,
he doesn't want you to be the star.
All the comments and all the videos have been saying, "Well done, Andy." So it's become a bit of a meme. But at least he's still letting me do this.
Wow! So you got demoted because out of jealousy?
Pretty much. I mean, in fact, I actually, if you check out the WrestleTalk News next week, I actually have to compete in a series of challenges against my fellow WrestleTalk presenters in an attempt to win Ollie's approval. So do
Sounds
check out
like
the
Ollie's
WrestleTalk
mad
News.
with power.
He always has been and always will be. And again, I'm going to shoot on Ollie right now. He came into the office on Wednesday and Thursday with a cough and said, "Don't worry, I'm not contagious. I'm not contagious. It's not COVID, and it isn't COVID. He's not got COVID. He's like, I'm not contagious at all. Don't you worry." And then last night I was sitting there and went, I think I've got a cough coming on. And this morning I woke up and I've got Ollie's cough. So thanks for not being contagious, Ollie Davis. Really kind of you.
Wow, Ollie's just, very, very mean.
I know. Anyway, the final one for today. Sheldon Jackson says, what is Impact Wrestling doing right with the women that WWE and AEW should be doing? Thoughts on Impact's Under Siege card so far? Ishii versus Alexander, VBD versus Briscoes, Honor No More versus Bullet Club, Taya versus Deonna, and Tasha Steelz versus Havoc.
Giving them time, making them feel legitimate, and also they already have like the long history of how they treat their knockouts and how they're presented. Their knockouts are presented, rather. That history is already there. So, like I said, giving them time, giving their stories depth, keeping the matches fresh, keeping things moving. Man, they're doing a lot of good stuff with their women's division. Been doing a lot of good stuff with their women's divisions. Have been.
No, I couldn't have said it better myself. But before we do, just on that, what are your thoughts on the Iconics leaving?
Oh, dude, I like, it's one of those things where I kind of feel bad, but at the same time, it's like, you know what? Like, if it just wasn't for them anymore, it wasn't for them, like they, people have other dreams. I think sometimes when you get like, in so much into this like wrestling bubble, you forget like there's people have other dreams like outside of wrestling. So I saw it and like I went on their bios and like I know that they're also like pursuing acting and stuff. So I'm like, you know what? Like they have a fan base. They have good social media followings. They have an opportunity to go and do something else. Might as well take that opportunity while they can. So, yeah, it's going to suck not to see them on Impact or, anything like that. They were really cute, one of a kind tag team. They want to do other things. So why the hell not?
Why the hell not, indeed. Right, well, that is all we have time for today. Thank you so much, Denise, for carrying me through this podcast.
No, I didn't get a good job.
Good job, Denise.
No one gave me a
everyone in the
sticker.
Comments say good job, Denise, and then I'll put it up on the screen.
I want an asterisk golden sticker.
Everyone say it. Everyone say it. Otherwise, Denise is going to be
saying it.
She's going to be not yet because we're on a slight delay. Everyone in a minute is going to start saying well done.
I know you don't. Now I get why Ollie pushed you out of this, news stuff. Now I'm just thank you. Somebody finally said good job. I was up at 7 a.m. for this show, people.
See, it's all coming in now. Good job. Good job. There you go. Good job, Andy.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
So, yes, thank you very much. We'll be back tomorrow with the SmackDown podcast. I forget who's on it, but I imagine it'll be Pete and Tempest. On Tuesday, we'll have the Raw podcast and all the usual weekly podcasts. And then next weekend, it's Backlash, WrestleMania Backlash. So we'll be doing live reactions to that. It'll be, I believe, I don't know if it's been announced yet. I'm not going to say it just in case it's a surprise. But tune into that. And once again, do please get the WrestleTalk magazine. It is in the the link is in the description. But for now, thank you very much, Denise, again. And thank you all for watching. Bye.
Bye-bye.